everybody. Welcome to our Monday Night Live.
Yo.
Roundtable. Everybody on the channel, Remi, Darren, and Chris, they've all done a video just recently on is it too late to build a homestead? And so I kind of built a few of our questions tonight around. It seems like everybody had their own take on it, their own idea, their own outlook. And it was really interesting to see everybody's different point of view on it. So, to jump right in, welcome to our Monday Night Live Roundtable Edition. How's everybody doing this weekend? How was your weekend?
Not so bad.
Sounds pretty good.
Sick a little bit, but
Yeah. Anything interesting happened over the weekend?
Snow started melting. That was interesting.
yeah, we're supposed to have better weather for the next few days also.
Nice. Yeah, I'm hoping that we're out of the cold now.
Yeah, it was funny. I went into work today. So we just started going back to work on Mondays. So on Mondays now we go down to the office. And
it could be just on my end. I don't know.
It's just on your end.
Yeah.
Well, we see you're frozen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mondays we go down to the office. So today I went down to the office and everything was frozen up and I couldn't see much grass. And then I came home and the sun was shining and it was warm. And I'm like, oh my God, we actually have some mud on the driveway and I can see a little bit of grass and some blueberry plants sticking out of the snowbanks. It's awesome.
You're on the verge of mud season.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is we don't really have a mud season here because we just have so much sand. So as soon as something melts a little area, the water just drains off. So
It's good.
I think we have maybe a week or two of maybe a bit of mud on the driveway, but after that,
I don't
nothing.
know.
Yeah.
So Mike is frozen again. Oh no. Okay.
The cows have more mud than we
they
do.
keep freezing up on your end, Chris?
No, I'm. Everybody's good on my end.
It's me.
I think
Everyone's good on my end.
Yeah.
That sounds wrong, but yeah.
All right. If it happens one more time, I'm going to switch over to the satellite. So it
Okay.
might glitch.
How about everyone watching? Is everything okie dokie? Anyone freezing up? Anyone you can't hear?
Looks like we got a few people in the chat now. Little homestead by the beach. Patrick
Totally
Cost.
joking.
Patrick Cost. Let's see who else is here. Crucy does gardening and stuff, and my buddy Xavier. If resistance is futile.
Oh, that
Okay.
could be a topic in of itself.
That could be, especially like such an advanced civilization, but they've got those pipes and tubes going everywhere on their suit.
It's because it looks cool.
All right, my first question for tonight was it hits near and dear to what I've been doing up here too. So it's building styles. What types of building styles do you like out on the farm? Because we've been talking about, so many different things. We wanted to do, like, we've got a log cabin going. I've done some pole barn build. We're also doing a bunch of framework and doing just stick framing upstairs. But I know Angie wanted to do, that cordwood building she was really interested in getting into.
Okay.
So what types of buildings have you used or building styles have you used out on the homestead, and which one did you like the best and why?
Who goes first?
You do. You spoke first. You're up.
Well, I've never really built anything yet, so I don't really have much to say except that, I try to find free stuff around. There's always like an old smelt shanty somewhere that someone's want to get rid of that I end up, getting for free or for just a few bucks that I can put some chickens in it. Besides that, I know we're supposed to build a pole barn this summer, but something I've never done before, so I don't know. It's going to be something new for me, so stay tuned.
Pole barns are awesome. To me, they're such an easy, logical way for most people to build. It was interesting because most pole barns are built with you put the poles in the ground and then you can build upon that, which is so easy to do. You can do it anywhere, but there were actually some pole barns and pole built houses down in the US where the poles were stuck in the ground, but then they continued to do everything upright instead of horizontal, which was pretty interesting. But it was because of the mud that they had. So I want to say it was like, down in the south somewhere where they have that mud and clay where as soon as you stick some wood in there, no oxygen gets to that wood. So you don't have to worry about it rotting. So that's pretty cool. The other style. So hold on. So we've built a bunch of pole barns, all the stuff we've kind of done around the farm, like the cow shelter, the chicken coop, that kind of stuff. We try and build it on a pole barn design. So we stick our logs in the ground and then build up from there. We don't have to worry too much about rotting because we're on sand and it goes down like, I want to say 25 feet easily. So we can build on that and we don't have to worry about rotting too much because the water drains off quick. So that's our preferred style here. However, one of the ways that I'd really like to start building, if I have the time and I have the means and if I work on it, is the one channel, The Norseman, where they build very old school techniques. So when they build a barn or a shed or a house, they actually build it on stone, which we call it, like they build it up on stone, so it's off the ground a bit, and the stone is shaped, so it's almost like mushroom shaped. So mice, rats, and that kind of stuff can't actually get up into the house. And then everything is done with, I want to say, wood and natural stuff. So they build the house, the insulation is sawdust rather than regular insulation, and they use a bunch of other stuff where it's all natural, and basically it should last forever, which is really cool.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot more interesting than the way we build things.
I know. For me too, it's like, yeah, I'll just throw something up there. But to me, being able to build a chicken coop using some of those like mushroom shaped stones where the mice or the rats and that kind of stuff can't get up over and around the stone to climb up into the chicken coop to start eating any feed or anything like that, to me is such a cool idea and concept. Like this is the kind of knowledge that we need nowadays to start living off grid and start building homesteads from.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting when you mentioned about the building up off the ground, because we've done sort of pole barns where it's in the ground, and our big barn that we didn't build is basically built that way. But when we're building smaller buildings, we do like to try to build them up on something, because then you put it on either wood that's not going to rot, like cedar or something, or if it has to be treated, it has to be treated, but at least you can keep the bulk of it from that rot interface with the ground. But to be honest, when we build things, we really try our best to just build boxes, which sounds funny, but building them square or a rectangle, that also works. But keeping them simple, whether you are building a pole barn, whether you're building it framed or whatever it is, keeping it simple and not too ornate makes it quicker.
Yeah.
And you kind of end up with the same result. So we have this running joke that we're really good at building boxes of kind of all sizes.
But it's true.
I found
it's
that the pole barn style goes up so fast. It's ridiculous how
It
fast
does.
you can throw something up
and
that
it's
way.
so easy.
And I've
And
kind of
as
tried to
long
switch
as you
over. Even when I
have-
built this temporary goat shelter, I did it the same way. I just posts and slapped on some plywood to it, and away I was gone. Because especially with the goats and some of the livestock like that, I've realized that they don't need a whole lot. You
No.
don't need a whole lot of structure. You just
Not
need
at all.
walls and a roof.
And to me, when we were building the chicken coop and the cow shelter and the pig shelter and that, to me, it's like, this took us a day to build. So
Mhm.
For me, I think it actually took us longer than a day, but I want to say that's the kind of how quick it was to build these pole barn style buildings. So if that lasts 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and then I have to replace it, so be it. That's okay, because
can
it was so
I don't
quick and
know.
easy to build that I can do another one in kind of no time at all.
Well, and that's a nice thing when you either come up with a design that you could replicate it and build it quickly. That's great, because then you figure out the tweaks in the first one, and then it's like, all right, I need a second one. This is what I need. Boom, it's done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I do agree with Remi too about the recycling, because we did that not this past winter, but the winter before. We needed another place to put sheep, and we had these weird things that were left over. I don't know what they were. We think maybe they were like a dance floor or something. We're not really sure what they were, but they were squares. So we're like, hey, if we put a bunch of these together and we reuse some old like an old A-frame trusses, we're like, we could put this together probably quick enough to beat the frost. So it's sitting above grade, but we were able to get it up, I think, like a day before it actually got like the hard freeze. So it was like, well, that worked.
Now I got a question. Are you a bigger fan of leaving it open ground on the bottom for livestock or sheep or whatever, or do you prefer actually having a floor to it?
I've got two answers to that, because it depends what kind
Yeah.
of livestock it is.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. Because I found with my goats in the old goat barn I didn't like it as much as just having the ground open.
Mm-hmm. As long as you've got good drainage, we find anything like all the bigger hoofed animals. As long as you've got good drainage, that's kind of key. Build it in a high spot. We prefer it with the dirt for the most part, or the ground floor. Sometimes you have to put a little bit in there, like some sand or something, if you don't have a perfectly draining area. But on the flip side, when it's like poultry and that, definitely prefer solid floors.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Going back to when I was on the horse farm, we did 36 horses that we looked after. And there were some that were on solid concrete, some that were on broken concrete. So it was like from, 1812 concrete floor that was broken up, half dirt, half concrete, and some that were on just gravel dirt. So it was a good mix of bedding and stuff. What I found the easiest really is if you do a concrete floor with rubber and then the bedding on top.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that rubber encompasses the entire area that those animals are on. And that's for a large animal. For a small animal, I'd say if you have a deep bedding that they would be on, that'd be perfect. No problem whatsoever. It's just that the large animals are able to move that bedding with one swipe of their hoof or paw. So, they expose the ground, they expose the bedding. So, but if you go dirt bedding, it drains or a dirt floor drains no problem. So the amount of urine and that kind of stuff, it drains out easily. It's great. However, it makes it hard to change the bedding itself. So if you try and go in there with a pitchfork and start scooping out wood shavings, it makes it hard on a dirt floor. Whereas with a solid floor with shavings, it makes it very easy to take away all the bedding.
We actually have a bit of a hybrid going on in our big barn where we have a dirt floor, and with the sheep and stuff, it's not so bad because the mats that we have don't quite reach to the edge. So you end up with a little bit of dirt around the edge. So you still get the drainage, but you can get the most of the bedding on the mats, which makes it a little easier to clean. But then the other thing, like kind of you were saying, big versus smaller, the sheep are small enough, a pack of bedding, yay deep or even that big is not a big deal, and that keeps them up off the cold, etc. But even the big animals, they'll compact it and compact it and compact it because they're heavier, right? So, I think it's just it really depends on what you've got below. Like if you don't have the good drainage, then you may not want the dirt floor.
Yeah.
Because that could be a whole heck of a lot.
And it depends on how often you're changing that bedding. So if you're doing like kind of a deep bedding through the winter, that works pretty good for the most part. So like our chickens are on a deep bedding, the Chanticleer, but the coop gets below freezing at night. So, you go in there in the morning and everything is frozen. It's not like the floor is warm or anything like that. Everything is frozen compared to other larger animals, say in an actual barn. So it all depends on the situation, the animals, what you have for flooring.
I like to think that everything depends also on the kind of predators you have around. If you have big animals, predators probably won't be able to get under or dig and go in your barn. Like if you have horses or sheeps, I doubt that a black bear can dig under and get in there before you have a chance to see it. But if you have chickens or rabbits or something like that, even the rabbits can dig themselves out.
Rabbits are brutal for that.
Yeah. A weasel can fit in a very, very small hole. So if you don't have a wooden floor, it might be dangerous for chickens. I have my chickens in my garage. My 4 chickens. I have them in my garage, and I don't have a floor. But then again, like I'm there every day. It's like hooked to my house. If there's an animal that goes in there, I'm probably screwed. But I had a weasel problem last year and was able to get it before it got to my chickens. So it's all something you have to think of if you want to do a wooden floor or not.
Oh, exactly. And it's the
All
rest
right,
of
I
the
might
coop
lose
too.
you for
So
a
it's
second
like,
because I'm going to switch my internet. Everybody
man.
keeps dropping out on me.
So like you said, you have to look at the predators too. Like we had raccoon problems before we actually built kind of a proper chicken coop. There's also skunk problems, owl problems. There's so many predators out there that our neighbor lost. I want to say it was like 14 ducks or something because of a fox.
Yeah.
But again, he just did, I think it was a 4-foot page wire fence around the ducks. So it's not just the floor style, but it's the wall style, it's the animals, it's the predators, it's the equipment you have to be able to manage that. There's so many different factors that go into it.
Well, and that, like you say, with factors too, it's what you're building for, right? Like in the case of horses, and a lot of the times you're just giving them the roof is kind of and the sides to keep them out of the wind, but it doesn't need to be enclosed. It's just so they can get out of the rain.
Well,
you don't really have.
I'd say on that it depends on the horses.
It does, yes,
and the owners.
I should quantify that, yes, but But compared to chickens, where exactly you're the other spectrum where you've got to keep everything out. You're not just giving them shelter. They actually don't necessarily, depending on the kind of chicken, they may not need a lot of actual shelter, but
Yeah.
sometimes that shelter is more to protect them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of knowing what you need the shelter to do.
Yeah.
Finally got you guys back, and I didn't lose you this time. Everybody was
Nice.
dropping out on me. So if I come across a little fuzzy tonight, I apologize. I had to switch back over to my satellite internet until I can climb back up on the roof and remount my
If
booster
if
mask.
Mike comes across as a little bit fuzzy, he apologizes for not shaving. Welcome to Monday Night Live.
I am sorry for nothing. Thank you. I do have a question for you guys.
Uh-oh.
And
Is it personal or
pertains back
homesteading?
to it's homesteading. It's not personal.
Okay.
I'll save that till after this one. I watched everybody's video on how it was. Is it too late or is it not too late?
Yeah.
If you were going to try and convince somebody to pick up this lifestyle, what argument would you take? What would your argument be? How would you convince somebody?
It's all about food. The food is better. The food is cheaper to a certain point. I mean, of course, you have to invest maybe a little bit to start, but you don't really have to invest much. If you want to start a garden, you can just take a seed, put it in the dirt. It'll grow into something you can eat. You don't need to have this big fancy garden to start. I planted some flowers a while back. Well, what I thought were flowers. It cost me like $2.50, and it turned out to be chives, and I didn't know. So it's something I could eat. Like you can grab apples, plant them, and you'll get apples at some point. You can, find some raspberries, wild raspberries in the woods, transplant them on your property. They'll grow. It's so easy to get food, and it's way better than what you can buy at the store. And especially at these times, that food chain has never been so uncertain. Um, I mean, it's easy to convince someone that you need to get ready because cost of everything is going so high that if you wait too much, like I mean, eventually maybe there's going to be a point where we're going to have to decide. We have to cut the cable, we have to cut the internet, we have to cut everything because we can't afford it anymore. But at least, no matter what happens, I know my two freezers are full and my two fridges are full. And hopefully this year I'll be able to learn how to can more stuff. So I'll have a few shelves full of food as well. So, and you can lose your job. I mean, we don't have to go too deep into this. If you just lose your job and you wonder how you're going to be able to afford the payments you have to make if you don't have to worry about food, I mean, it's big load of stress removed from your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that you kind of hit the nail on the head at that last one is like, you buy insurance for your life, you buy insurance for your house, you buy insurance for your vehicles, you buy insurance for everything. To me, homesteading or, growing food for yourself or raising food for yourself is insurance for kind of everything else that could go on in your life. So to me, it has always been about what happens if you lose your job and you don't have any money in the bank or you don't have any food in the cupboard. What happens if there's another natural disaster or the power goes out where, say, we've had situations where in Quebec where the power went out and thousands of people were out without power for, I want to say it was like 3 weeks. How do you feed yourself if you can't go into the grocery store and use a credit card or a debit card? Do you have enough cash saved up for that? Do you have enough food in your pantry to be able to last at least a few days to get over the initial shock of what has gone on? To me, the whole premise of homesteading is to be able to provide a cushion for yourself if something goes wrong. So you have food that you've canned or you've preserved or dried or frozen and it's set aside. And as well as that, you now have food that is actually still walking around in the fields, in the cages, in the chicken coops, where it's still food that you haven't even touched yet. So it's like your own food supply chain. To me, it's just kind of a no-brainer that you would set up your own food supply chain in case of some sort of emergency that regular insurance doesn't cover.
Mhm. No, I think you both have some excellent points. And actually, when you mentioned about the insurance, I went to talk to a financial planner, and interestingly enough, they didn't think it was crazy to be growing your own food. Maybe farming to try to do it as a business, maybe crazy.
That's crazy.
Raising it for your own consumption, it was kind of like, yeah, exactly like what you said. It's a good backup. That being said, I've been doing this for a fairly long period of time. It's 2009. So what's that? 14 years? I think it is.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. But this is a question that I've never really had a good answer to, because I agree with what both Remi and Darren said. 100%. You're better quality. You know where it's come from. You have the insurance policy. You have the skills to do it. You have the physical seeds, animals to do it, etc. But in my time doing this up until recently, where things are starting to maybe hit people a little closer to home, there's always been that adage of, well, yeah, but why would you do it when I can go buy it? It's easier to buy it. And I think
true.
It equates down to the hard part isn't convincing them that it's better quality, isn't convincing them that it's better for them, isn't convincing them that it's good insurance policy.
No.
People know those things. Like they know it in the back of their mind. They don't want to do the work. So, and sometimes I think this goes back to that video we did recently about like how much food a human actually consumes. Some people don't have any clue about that, right?
It's not only the work, but it's like, I think a lot of people, wow, maybe it is the work. A lot of people have trouble with the work, but also people have trouble with the cow farts, and people have trouble with taking another life.
Yeah, when it comes to the animal stuff. But on the gardening side of it, I think gardening's a lot of work when you start scaling it up.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people too. This is where I really have enjoyed the YouTube experience, because up until recently, there's been no way to show people that you actually can do it, right? They may have just seen like, oh yeah, you grew some squash, but they didn't see the process and the planning. Right. And so I think being able to show people almost is, people learn better from seeing, right? So if you can show them that it's like, you actually can do this, and yes, it's work, but maybe it's not as much work as you kind of think it is, or as much time as you think it is. And obviously when you add everything together, and if you're trying to be completely self-sufficient, that's a lot of work, but you could still get there if you wanted to. I think showing people that it's actually feasible, because a lot of people don't have anybody in their lives who have done it to show them that it's feasible.
Yeah.
They have no reference in their life of, yeah, I actually could grow tomatoes, or I actually could do this, or I could put enough apples away to feed my family for the year.
It's one of those, I think it's hard for a lot of people to be able to draw upon some other knowledge. Like, if you haven't grown up with someone gardening in your family or raising animals in your family, how do you start gardening? Like, sure, you can watch YouTube or read books and all that, but when it really comes down to it, getting out there, finding space to be able to garden and actually getting the seeds in the soil and raising the plants is totally different from reading a book or watching a YouTube video.
Yeah, I think you see, I'm going back to YouTube again, but you see a lot of people that are doing it for the first time. There's a lot of people that are doing it for the first time. And
Yeah.
those people
Mhm.
often, I'm going to say it, maybe I'll eat my words later, but those are the people who show that experience. They love the challenge, right?
Right.
And so they're not afraid of the challenge. But I'm not saying other people are afraid, because that's not what I'm trying to say. That's what it's sounding like. But you have a lot of other people that they just need that little push to be like, yes, I could do it. Yes, it's possible. And no, maybe I can't grow 6,000 pounds of food to feed my family of 4. But maybe I can grow 100 or 200 or 1,000, or right. Like, it's showing that possibility that
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. It's like kind of afraid, because I think of my brother who lives in Toronto, and he lives in a basement apartment. And I want to say he wants the kind of life that I have, but you know, he wants to do it from where he is. So for me, putting myself in his position, it's like, okay, so I'm in a basement apartment in Toronto. Okay, so I want to start growing stuff. Well, what about the humidity in the apartment? What if I wreck the apartment and I have to pay for that? If I kind of put say a little, whatchamacallit, seed tray or something, or screw something to the windowsill to be able to start growing some lettuce or something by the windowsill. What if I put those screws into the wall and the landlord doesn't like those screw holes? What how am I going to actually start doing some growing in this basement apartment in Toronto, or in this high-rise apartment in Toronto? I think that's one of the biggest challenges that some people have to overcome.
that's a tough one. I was thinking about this I'm not going to go down the tangent too much, but I think we're in North America, we're all bound by what others are doing around us in a way, which is exactly what you're saying. Not necessarily, if somebody else owns it, then you're constrained. If you've got neighbors that maybe don't like to hear a rooster, then you're constrained. If you've got bylaws, then you're constrained. So it's also sorting through that. There is a huge component to that. I think most of what I was speaking to was people who maybe have the resources, they have the land, or they're in a situation where they actually relatively easily could start. But yeah, what you're saying, or what you're talking about, Darren, they don't have an answer for that yet.
I know, eh? Yeah, yeah.
See, and I often wonder about that, because I know tons of people who live in actually downtown Toronto and stuff, and they will grow either in little rooms in there, and they have exhaust fans going through the windows, stuff like that. If you put screws or anything in there, that's kind of common in apartments and places that you're renting in the city. Because I mean, people go in, they put up shelves, they put up hooks and everything like that. So it's one of those commonplace things where when you go to move out, you have to plaster over those. You have to reprime and repaint back to, a neutral color. And I used to see a lot of that. So it's one of those things where the only thing holding you back would be yourself. Now, I mean, as for trying to argue the point to get somebody into it, I mean, history itself has shown us that you can't rely just on the government to take care of
No,
you forever.
not at all.
Eventually the system's going to hiccup. Eventually it could fail. Like, you could even go down the road that our electric grid, our power grid, isn't set up to handle, civilization keep, as we keep multiplying, it's
You
just
look at
eventually
human
it's not going to handle it.
history since the beginning of what they have told us. I want to say since the beginning of time, but since the beginning of time is like, but since what they've told us is humans have failed at some point in our lives, an empire gets too big, or something doesn't work out, or nature says, no, you're not going to do that. So there's so many possibilities and so many things that can happen where, you know, if you're not prepared or you're not ready, here's your wake up call.
Change is one of those absolute guarantees in life. That
Exactly.
every day you wake up, something could be the weather, could be the temperature, could be whatever. Something is going to change every single day of your life.
And it's not to say that what we are doing will allow us to survive longer than anyone else, but again, it's like an insurance policy where hopefully we have a little bit extra where we can hedge our bets against what might happen in the future.
That's just it. It's just like you said, it's an insulation or an insurance policy, just so that when times do get tough, you have something else to rely on. Yeah, because I mean, and going back to people who feel like they can't do it, that's one of the main reasons that I
think
enjoy doing.
Everyone
this
can
YouTube.
do it.
Yeah,
Everyone can do it.
Well, Angie had a good garden going. She practiced before we moved up here, but like I had never built anything. She said she still doesn't know how to grow. So it's one of those things where you just keep trying and you keep trying and you can make things happen. If you want it bad enough, you'll find a way.
It does. Yeah. If you want it, you can find a way. It doesn't matter your situation. It doesn't matter your location. You can start somehow, some way. That's it. It's, it just depends on how bad you actually want it. You take someone who's in a basement apartment in Toronto, and you can start setting up shelves above your kitchen sink, above the one window you have, and start growing some chives or rosemary or basil or something, and just start something.
The thing is, after you succeed with the first few things,
You're addicted.
it's easier after. I have a coworker that, she came to me at some point. She's like, I planted some seeds and I don't know why nothing came up. And I started asking questions. I'm like, what did you do? Well, I pushed the seeds way down. Like she had them so deep that there was no way they were going to come out. And, I just told her plant some more, but just, don't go that deep. And the trick I gave her is if you don't know how deep to plant the seeds, plant them as deep as the size of the seed. If it's a tiny seed, you just plant it right on top. If it's a little bigger seed, plant it a little bit deeper. And next thing you know, she came to work and she was all proud, showing me her pictures of the stuff she was growing, and she's back at it this year. So
Mike, stop smiling.
What?
No.
Mike's smiling. He's thinking that's what she said.
Oh my God.
Yeah, as soon as she was able to do a few ones, she got better after.
That's awesome because that's a great example of where sometimes it just takes that little bit of a nudge, right? Like she went out and tried it, didn't work, and then was able to talk to you about it, and then suddenly that little thing totally changes everything, right, for her.
Yeah.
But I think it's also one other point that I think it brings up too is I think sometimes people, when we talk about the growing food part of homesteading, people get too familiar. People are too familiar with some of the food items that they don't even think about it. They don't think of where it comes from or how it grows, right? It's like, oh, tomatoes, they know it comes from a plant, but they may not know how a tomato plant grows versus a pepper plant versus an eggplant versus a whatever. Like they may know potatoes come out of the ground, but they don't, right? And sometimes that when you're too familiar, it's a weird concept, but when you're too familiar with it, you don't think about it. When you don't think about it, you kind of take it for granted, which is another leap into the too late to homestead, because we're getting to the point where I think most people are no longer taking it for granted.
Yeah, because what might be so easy for us could be something completely unknown for someone else.
Or a staple food, like the potatoes, for example. Lots of people, potatoes are a staple. And I know it sounds silly to say this, but if you don't know how to grow them and suddenly the potato supply disappears, that's not a staple anymore.
No. Just want to take a sec. James, thanks for supporting Mike and Angie. That's awesome.
Hello, James. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, James. We appreciate that so much. You know, I want to touch back on something too. Like Remi was saying, that he just inspired somebody and gave them a few tips, and now they're really into her own garden and everything. And I watched that happen 3-4 times easily, you know, in a week, after Angie started taking in some of her produce when she was working at the college. And next thing you know, like some people next year, like, oh, I started a garden, and then they were excited about it and they were happy.
That's so cool to hear.
Yeah.
So
And just
it's like, yes, please do that.
exactly.
Let me,
and
as I smash my mic.
you don't realize
what else
how
can I
big of an
do to
impact
help
you guys
you?
are doing.
What other suggestions can I give you? Like, please let me into your life to help you grow more for yourself. Like,
let me introduce you to squash.
yeah. Here's Chris, squash. But it's like, here's my brain. Please pick it. Let me divulge any knowledge I have about growing stuff or raising animals. Please, I want you to do it. I want you to expand. I want you to become so self-sufficient and not have to rely on anyone.
And you know, back a few live streams ago, we were talking about promotions, how to put ourselves out there, marketing. I think somewhat it kind of falls in the same category where the more you talk about it, like we're here, we're doing some live streams, we're doing some videos, we're sharing it with our friends. People hear about gardening, people hear about us. The more that we talk about it, the more people want to know about it and want to get involved with it. When I started working, I've been there for 12 years now. I don't remember people talking about garden. Only 2-3 years ago, people started getting together and saying, hey, look, we're building a garden. You have too many tomato plants, bring them over. I'll bring some cucumber plants, like that's something happening now at work, which is completely new because it wasn't happening before. So there's that talk going around. People want to get invested a little bit more in the gardening, which is all good at the end.
It's so true and it's awesome. I have guys at work. I went into work last Monday, and like I said before, I just started going back to work on Mondays, and the rest of the time my boss said, like, stay at home, do whatever you want, you do good. But I went to work last Monday, and boss did like a pizza day, so he bought pizza for everyone in the office, and so we all went into the kitchen and we grabbed pizza and we're sitting down, and I'm sitting with 2 of the guys, and they're like, dude, your videos are so awesome. I'm like, thanks. And he's like, so, I love what you're doing and I want to do it. I'm like, okay, so go ahead and do it. It's like, you've encouraged me. I'm like, okay, great. Like, what else do you want to know? Like, tell me. Like, let me fill your brain with everything I have, because it's just contagious that way. It's like, it's so inspiring for me and for the guys I hear from, and like you guys, when I watch your videos as well, it's to me, it's like, yes, we can do it.
We're
It's
making
like
a difference.
the hook to
Yeah.
get people to grow is there's so much doom in the world, but growing anything,
There's so much
it's
doom
basically all it is
in,
hope.
Chris. There's so much doom in taxes.
That's part of it. Growing food still gives you hope, right?
It does.
It's a basic human thing that we have done potentially for all eternity, maybe not quite, but pretty close to. And I think that's a hopeful thought. It's all
I
it's
love
all
that.
in it somewhere.
I love that. That like, there is hope. There is so much opportunity. There's so much growth out there that we can achieve. It really is amazing.
Growth through growth.
Liberty by
One of my favorite
self-efficiency.
things is what is it? Wisdom
Keep your personal life
comes
personal.
Wisdom comes from experience, but experience comes from bad decisions.
So true.
So,
That's why I am so wise.
so get out there and make some bad decisions. Maybe that's more of a military thing. I should have brought that up.
Let
Maybe.
me impart some knowledge on you.
Let's check the chat and see who's here today. So we
Yeah.
got James
Must have
is
been
into his
update.
wild cucumbers are his favorite. Not to eat, but to use as a loofah. Oh, I see. You guys were talking about loofahs there. Okay. Crucy does gardening and
Loofahs
stuff
for
is
us
here.
are so hard to grow.
Loofahs?
Yeah.
I thought they just took a bunch of water. I know Angie grew some. She had them on the trellis, and they grew really well.
We tried outside and they didn't amount to much. Then we tried them in the greenhouse and they just produced a whole ton of foliage without any loofahs. So
Huh.
Yeah, I grew them in zone 6, so now we're in zone 4, so I don't know. I'm trying this year.
Fair enough. Yeah, we were in zone 6 when she grew them. Now we're in zone 4,
Okay.
so things could be a bit different now.
We're going to
Let's
try them
see
this
who,
year and see if we're pushing it or not.
Mennonite Farmhouse is here today. Hey, guys.
Mennonite Farmhouse. What's going on? Hope you're doing amazing. Patrick Cost. Hope you're doing amazing. James, have you guys seen some of Mennonite Farmhouse's? I want to say it's Leanne. I'm so bad with names.
It is
So if
Leanne, yeah.
Yeah. Like the French fry, the hamburger French fries, cheeseburger French fries and hamburgers and cheesecake and oh man. Crazy. I'm like getting hungry just thinking about it now.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, don't go to her channel
Yeah, I
hungry.
know.
That's a bad idea. I got one for you guys.
Yeah.
If you had one tip that you were going to give somebody that was just going to start off doing this stuff, if you had to pick one thing, what would you do? What would that one thing be?
Ooh.
Where to start?
Yeah. I mean, like, would it be where to start? Would it be, what type of land to pick? What zone to pick
So-
it in, maybe?
My tip from everything I've been through is start. Just start. Do something. Anything at all. Just begin. Just take that little baby step. Just if it's something as simple as going into your local store and buying some seeds, just do it. Just take that first step. That's it. Just take that step. And then
I think I
take
would
the next step.
I would tell them don't get overwhelmed.
No,
Don't feel like you have to finish everything today, because there's
no,
always another project.
no.
I would probably just tell them to try. Just start.
Yeah.
Go ahead and try.
Exactly. Just start it. Just begin. And just
never
take the
seen
first
I love the
anyone
step.
headspace
try
you guys
that,
are
like
in.
it.
Just take that
Oh
step.
man. Yeah. It really is just taking that first step, just beginning, just planting a seed, one single seed. It's
Mhm.
like as soon as you know you can plant a seed and grow something, it all begins from there.
Yep.
So we've got start, try, don't get
Do
overwhelmed.
or not do. Or no.
Do not. There is no try.
Do.
Yes.
So we've got start, try. Don't get overwhelmed. And I think I'm going to be the downer. mine's gonna be focus, because
Ah,
in like bringing it back to the topic of the round table about is it too late to homestead, without completely answering that question. Well, I'm going to answer it. I would say no, but I do think focusing a little bit of focus at the beginning will help you, and kind of constantly coming back to that focus will help you exponentially. It's like a snowball thing.
it is true, because I remember back to when I first started my one garden, and I was in this subdivision, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do gardening. And I planted all these seeds and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm gardening. And it was just overwhelming. And I had too many things going on and too many things that came up. And then all of a sudden, everything died. And that one thing came up, like my broccoli, one broccoli came up. And like one carrot came up. And I was like, wow, okay. So like I did all of this and I thought I would achieve greatness. And I got like one broccoli.
And that has the potential to leave you feeling very discouraged, right?
Yeah.
It felt so bad after that. It felt like my whole world just crashed down on me. And it's like I had failed at subsistence. I had failed at providing. I had failed at being able to provide for my family.
Which isn't really a failure because it's still a learning experience. But that's why I chose the focus, as because you won't, if you did not know anything about growing food and you were just starting, you wouldn't necessarily know, because it's not always talked about that focusing can be
thankfully I have so many failures in my history that I realized that all those failures were learning experiences.
10,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah.
You know what? I see your point though, because just like Angie was telling me in the beginning, just do it. Just get out there, just start.
You have to do
you'll
it.
figure it out as you go
Because
then, but
for
start.
most of us, the doing and the failing and the learning from that is what makes us better.
Mm-hmm. Like it took me, I think, 5 days of beating myself up to try and build that first chicken coop.
We just put a whole bunch of eggs in the incubator, and last year we were like hatched a whole ton in the incubator. This year it's like the temperature's going from here to there. It's all wonky. It's like, okay, guess what? It's another learning experience on how to hatch eggs in the incubator. If you're not willing to fail, then you won't grow.
Yeah, true.
That's true. You have to be willing to get out there and do something to grow and improve
Yeah.
yourself and learn new things.
If you aren't willing to embarrass yourself like I do, then how will you expand your life?
Well, learning in general is the I think the theme of the day. You do need to keep learning.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I keep saying that the worst mistake you can make is not trying to learn or fix the previous mistake you've made.
Mhm.
I used to coach kids in soccer, and the thing I would tell them is if you lose the ball, don't give up. You made a mistake, but don't give up. Go and get that ball again
Yeah.
and learn from what you just did there
Mhm.
and try not to do it again. And it's the same thing that applies to everything else in life. You make a mistake, you know what you did wrong, just don't do it again or try to do it, but in a different way.
Yep.
You want to learn from your mistake, you want to grow from that mistake and get better.
And even if you do that mistake again, try not to do it as bad.
Yeah.
Go back and deconstruct your successes and failures.
Yeah.
If, in terms of homesteading, I would say that's a yearly thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe you can potentially do it more frequently, but you should really be sitting down. Once you get a year or two into it, you should definitely be sitting down and going, okay, what worked well, and why do we think it worked well, and what didn't work well, and why do we think it didn't work well?
Yeah.
There's always something that's going to go wrong.
Hey, Mike,
Always.
do you want to highlight Mennonite's Leanne's comment there? People are lacking life experience. That is so true. Is that today, people don't have that same experience that, our grandparents did, our great grandparents did. It's crazy.
And they don't necessarily have access to those experiences either, right?
No.
The closest thing is formats like YouTube. You can actually watch others doing it.
Yeah.
At least,
Well, I think it's even compounded because, like, especially with what's been going on the last few years, we've become more and more of a digital society where we're lacking in the face-to-face. We're lacking in being able to go out to, say, grandma's farm or grandpa's farm and have them teach you things because we're not interacting as much anymore.
Yeah.
And it's all just turning into like a digital.
But despite what the promise of a digital future brings us, that won't feed us.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
We can't eat digitized food.
Oh, don't get me started on the lab meat stuff.
But it's true, right?
Chris, stop. Don't even go there.
That's a whole nother sort of doom.
That's
But it's true. The life experiences are lacking, right? So
Yeah.
it makes it easier and easier to go down that route where it's like going back to what we were talking about, trying to convince somebody to do it. I saw it in the chat quite a bit, and we all said it. It tastes better. But if you don't know,
Yep.
what's your benchmark?
Just like Drops was saying, I mean, they used to go on field trips through school to farms and stuff. Do you even hear of that anymore? Like, I haven't heard of that, and I don't even remember my kids doing it when they went to school.
I'm trying to think.
I want to say
Did they really?
the kids
Okay,
went on
I
field
couldn't
trips,
remember.
but
Apparently, they did.
no, not like the field trips we went on, where we went on like some cool field trips to like stuff, but Bridget's boys have gone on field trips where they went to Quebec City and went to like the aquariums and that kind of stuff, which is cool.
Mhm.
But also, I want to say, the boys here have so much more life knowledge, being as they help us harvest the rabbits and they help us butcher the cow and the chickens and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So they know exactly where their food comes from, exactly what meat is. compared to most kids in the
It's
world.
hilarious. There's a story from our daughter when she was in 4-H for a bit, and then that kind of went on the shelf in the last 2 years. But when she was young, I think they had them draw. This was like the clover buds, so kind of pre 4-H, and they had them draw like, "What's your favorite food?" And she drew a bunny on a plate, like a rabbit on the plate, and so the other kids were just like, "What?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, I like eating rabbits." They're
Yeah,
that was her life experience being exposed to that, right? But
right.
a lot of kids wouldn't even think of that as a food item. But and you can go further. A lot of people don't even know. They have an image in their mind of what a chicken is or what a chicken should look like, but do you really know what the chicken you buy in the grocery store actually looks like or where it actually lived?
Right.
How many people in the population of North America truly understand that?
The funniest thing is, one of the latest questions I saw on a forum on Facebook about homesteading was, we want to harvest rabbits, but what do they actually taste like? No one has a clue. There's a few who have piped up and answered that question that, kind of a combination between chicken and rat and turkey. But for the most part, it's like most people are like clueless on what food is what.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I've never tried rabbit. I've tried a lot of different things.
Oh, dude.
I think there was even one time I tried some street meat
Okay.
from over in Japan, and the guy couldn't speak
So,
English, so I
like-
have no idea what it was, but it was good.
The May 8th? No, May 7th. So May 7th is the Homestead Conference that I think we are all going to. So if anyone in the audience hasn't subscribed or hasn't gone to, check out the Eastern Ontario Homestead Conference. We're all going to it. We can answer any questions you guys have, but I think that night, Mike, if you guys are coming down to where we are staying at my parents' cottage, Bridget is
yeah, we
going to
are.
do some stuffed rabbit.
Oh,
And it's like, it's like stuffing turkey on Thanksgiving. It's so amazing.
stop it, Darren. I'm
Only my
drooling now.
friends, I tell you.
Remi, we're going out for poutine on, I think it's Thursday night. We're going to go out for poutine.
Yeah, I was promised so much food. I can't wait. Poutine, Highland cow,
Yeah.
lasagna,
We are
rabbit.
going to do some Highland cow. We're going to do some poutine. Angie's going to make us some epic lasagna. So it's going to be like an amazing weekend for food.
It's gonna be legendary.
It's going to be legend. Wait for it. Dairy.
Angie prefaced with, "It won't be burnt this time."
The funny thing is I keep saying it's burnt. It was never burnt. It was just like crispy.
Yeah, it was a little dried out because it stayed in there a bit long.
But it was still amazing.
In our defense, we up until that point we hadn't really gotten too many visitors over here, and so people just stopped in that we hadn't seen. You hadn't seen her in 3-4 years, 2 or 3 years. Yeah, so it's just one of those moments. That's where wisdom comes from.
And I'll keep harassing Ange on it, but that is one of the best lasagnas. Actually, it is the best lasagna I've ever tasted.
I'm not going to be able to live with her now.
Why not? It is. And I've tasted a lot of lasagnas.
Yeah. You know what? To this day, I still can't eat like spaghetti, lasagna. What was the other one? Yeah, even some chilies. Like I was overdone with those as a kid. And it was always just the very straight tomato Heinz sauce. You know, it was nothing special. And hers is the only one I can eat now. She'll make her chili
Yeah.
the same way. It's like all the
Yeah.
same base sauce, and it's
So
delicious.
so you used to like, our parents' concoctions.
Yeah,
I
I did.
hate concoctions. It's like my mom used to make a whole ton of concoctions where they were, and that's what I call it. It's like, these, I want to say it was like casseroles and stuff, where it's like all this
Mhm.
stuff combined into making this meal that was like, not so much. No, thank you. I'll pass.
You know what? Speaking of food, what has been your favorite garden
Oh,
layout that worked the best?
what? How is that food? That's like more like, like
Well, that's not
I was
chili,
I
unless you've
thought you were
learned
gonna say
a
like,
chili plant.
what has
Can you
been
grow
your
chili straight up in a plant?
favorite garden recipe? No, your favorite garden layout. What is that?
Well, because it's
Mike.
back to the homesteading thing, man.
Okay.
Now, like, have you tried back to Eden gardening? Have you tried
What?
like
See,
really?
see
Okay,
how
so
lost I am right now?
okay, you guys know what I'm talking about, the back to Eden
No, I
gardening.
don't. You need to explain this to me.
Chris
It's the
probably
one
knows
that
to
uses.
explain it.
It's the one that uses.
Lasagna gardening, she says.
Yeah, basically, instead of tilling, you lay down layers of organic material. And then
Okay,
keep
so it's
growing
kind
it.
of like a no-till.
Yeah, it's like one method of it. I'm going to let Remi go first.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Well, the one I tried last year, no-till garden bed, was pretty good. Um, any kind of garden beds, really. All I did was put cardboard and put compost on it, and I had some cedar slabs that I put around just to keep the cardboard there and to stop the compost from falling off. And I grew some stuff in there, and every year you don't have to worry as much with the weeds since the cardboard kind of pretty much killed everything off. There's still some stuff coming up, but it's not as bad as it would be in a regular garden. So I guess that's probably my favorite one. Um, I also kind of like the whole garden bed per se, where you just it's kind of the same thing really. I did it with old pallets, and I made a strawberry beds out of it, and strawberries are thriving, and I have so many people keep telling me that they're gonna spread, and I keep telling them that I don't care. If they spread all over my property, it's food, right? I just won't have to mow the lawn. It's all, and I'll be able to eat it. So
Mulch between the. You'll just have to, as they spread and they kill the grass. You'll just mulch between the strawberries and
yep.
convert the grass. This is a tough one because layout wise, like actually planning out like this much row is going to be this much row is going to be that, this is going to go here, this is going to go there. Our garden always changes a lot because we try to move stuff around as much as we can. So I don't really have an excellent garden layout. And I don't even know if we have a favorite method of gardening, because I know a lot of people are, like to say, the back to Eden. A lot of people are really quite keen on it. Some people are very anti-tilling, I think it runs the spectrum from there. I'll be honest with you, and this is going to sound like a cop-out, but it really isn't. I kind of like them all. They all have their utility and their application, depending on what you're trying to grow. For example, I love the method for potatoes of kind of tilling a little bit, maybe not super deep, but a little bit, putting them down, covering them a little bit with soil, and piling a huge amount of straw on them. Worked really well for us the last couple of years. Would I do that for everything? No. So I think the short answer is it depends on what you're growing. But I think that's where a lot of the vegetables that people think about as a normal garden vegetable being annuals, they like disturbance of some kind, right? And that would be the one thing. We haven't actually built a large back to Eden type bed. We have done it with perennials, and I quite like it. We haven't really done it with a lot with annuals, but I could see there being limitations depending on what it was. So there's my complicated, convoluted, not really answering the question answer.
You make a good politician.
Growing food.
Go around the question, but not really answer.
Well, but the real answer to the question would be like 5 hours long of going through every single thing, right?
Everyone vote for Chris.
So for me, I like all of them. I'm like, again, it depends on your circumstances. So for us, different ways of gardening, I want to say we have all sand. So planting potatoes and carrots in all sand is awesome. You know, you need a bit of organic matter in there, and then it's great. But we can do the sand and grow potatoes and stuff. We've also done raised beds with just sticking compost in there and trying to grow stuff like lettuce and turnips and kohlrabi. And we want to this year start do some hugelkultur. So we're actually starting to give back to the soil and allow those beds to grow up and stuff. So there's so many different methods we can utilize. I don't really have a favorite. To me, it's like depending on the plant or the vegetable or the herb or the fruit or whatever, then that dictates the method rather than trying to do the method to dictate the item.
I think you summed it up better than I did. But yes, that.
I summed it up and I didn't even know what I was talking about. I'm just like, yeah.
Just could have just said,
try it.
Just say what he said.
What he said. Yeah. No.
So, do you rotate your crops often just for to give back to the soil, like Darren was saying?
We try to rotate everything every year. The potatoes, especially, we try to rotate. The carrots we do. I want to say the broccoli we have failed on. So I don't think this year we'll rotate. We just won't do them. So it's one of those things where rotating is good, but I think in the overall sense of things, it more depends on what you're adding to the soil and what you're providing back to the earth rather than the rotation.
I think it's scale a little bit too. Like, again, this is where we get just ridiculously complicated in trying to rotate because we also do seed saving too, right? So a lot of our plants are spaced out far enough. The ones that we can are spaced out far enough that we can actually save seeds from. So you've got the trying to rotate them around, but then also work within the bounds of your garden to keep them far enough away that they don't cross. And the nice part of it is it almost always works out that you don't grow in the same place because of that constant balancing act. So we usually start.
For us, the potatoes are the hardest because we have such a large space on the one side of the garden that is not raised beds, it's just open area.
Mhm.
So that kind of got dictated to that's going to be the potatoes. Whereas, this year we're like, no, we can't do the potatoes there. This year we have to move them somewhere else. So that requires opening up a whole new bed just for the potatoes.
And then you just make more gardens.
Exactly.
That's the other way to help with rotation. Just keep making
Yep.
more gardens. I need
Exactly.
more places for potatoes, so we're going to build over here.
Yeah.
That's what we did last year, and we're going to do it again next year.
And that's true. Is like this year, new gardens.
Well, and sometimes you can get really complicated and convoluted with it too. If you have a lot of garden space, you can even work it in with your animals, where your rotation could be that you let an area not be in production or not be in production for the whole year, and you put animals on it. I mean, you can get super complicated, super fancy with it if you've got the fencing and everything else.
I think.
What about
if
you,
get
Remi?
into
Have you
that
tried
kind of
like
thing,
companion planting before?
If I've tried what?
Companion
Yes.
planting or anything like that?
Yeah. So we tried like the Three Sisters, where you plant the beans, the corn, the squash, and it just didn't work for us. I think at that time because we weren't as knowledgeable on the time of year to plant, as well as how to plant and the area to plant. Like it had so much shade, it was crappy soil, that sort of thing. So the corn didn't come up and it was too shaded to grow anything else. So it's one of those things where, if you do companion planting, you really have to make sure that the soil is right, the sun is right, the moisture's right, that kind of thing, to make sure everything jives correctly to produce the amount that you want it to produce, sort of thing.
Yeah, I try to use as much space as I can. Um, Especially this year, I want to, shed wars and all. I want to do better than I've ever done. I'm still fairly new to gardening, also. Like, I mean, I started a while back, but I only started succeeding maybe like 3 years ago. So everything I do now is still somewhat trials and error.
Thank
Uh,
God you're succeeding. I'm not.
well, like I said, I use so much space that I'm bound to have success somewhere, right? Um, I have a garden bed to that side of the house. I have my main garden in the back of the house. I have a few more garden beds way back where I have like strawberry patches and stuff like that. Um, I have some space in my brother's property that usually I can go and plant a few things here and there. And my buddy Sells told me that I could plant some stuff on his property as well. I also have down like go in front of my barn. I made two about 4 feet by 12 feet, um, just straight up garden where I planted some stuff there also. I'm gonna use the community garden as well. I might have some space at my parents to grow some more stuff. And the thing is, I don't know why I was, you know, influenced by a friend that uh, made me plant a lot of squash this year, and I want to make
I
sure
wonder
that
who that could be. Yes.
I wonder.
I
Oh.
wonder who that is. Uh, I'm gonna be planting some squash pretty much at all those different places because I don't want anything to crossbreed, right? I want to be able to keep the seeds. So I might have some here. I'll have some on Sal's property. I'll have some on my brother's property because I know he doesn't grow squash. I'll have some on my parents' place as well. The community garden is going to be a little bit harder, a little bit tricky because there's a lot of people there growing squash as well. So I'm probably going to take the ones that I'm not afraid if they crossbreed, like maybe spaghetti squash or something like that. Where even last year I had some here they crossbred with another one, and instead of being yellow, they were green, but they were still as tasty. So I'm not really doing the companion growing. More try to use every little space you have. I'm gonna have some containers on my deck. I even have a place behind the house where when the grass doesn't really grow. Barely have to mow the lawn back there because there's only just this one plant that grow in the middle of the summer. I'm gonna take that space and plant a bunch of tomato plants. So just put some compost, plant a few tomato plants, and if they grow, fine. If not, well,
Mhm.
so be it.
It sounds
Have
like
you
a pretty
tried
good
doing
plan.
the vertical?
Yeah, the
planting?
grass isn't growing anyway. So
Yeah, put some compost and
yeah, if something else grows, so be it.
yeah.
Have you tried vertical planting, like building up, like all alongside a
Not
trellis
yet,
or the
I
fence?
not
love
yet. But
vertical planting.
I tried last year with cucumbers. They didn't grow, so I'm giving it a second try this year. Hopefully, I'm gonna succeed this time.
Okay.
I love vertical planting, except we did so many green beans this year that I'm like, we're gonna have green beans for the next 10 years after what we grew this year. So it's just crazy because we got the cattle panels and they were like 4 feet by 8 feet. So we put those down our one bed that's, I want to say it's like 24 feet by 2 feet. And we planted green beans there and they went crazy. So we were harvesting nonstop all year. So we were freezing them, we were canning them, we were eating them. We were like trying to figure out different ways to can them. But I think if anyone can vertical plant, that is definitely the way you should go for anything. Like we have more green beans than we know what to do with, basically. So
And
I
that's
got
a
a
good
couple recipes for you.
it is a good problem to have. So we did 3 different types of canning. We did some fermenting. We did freezing. So, we'll have green beans going into like 2052.
We're big fans of the vertical growing, even though
Yeah.
we do have space. Like we just keep building gardens, and we haven't executed it yet, but we are thinking about coming up with an idea of putting in. They're going to be sort of permanent trellises. In that, we're going to put in poles and probably
Nice.
use maybe some chain between the poles,
Yeah.
and baler twine to grow some of the plants up. But if we can multi-purpose them for some of the tomatoes as well, because it's that same thing. We can't, because we have multiple varieties of beans, multiple varieties of tomatoes that are indeterminate, and they need to be basically 3 meters apart from each other. So you end up having to have multiple trellises all over the place. And when you get to pretty big size trellises, we're thinking it might be easier just to plant them in the ground and be done with it. So we'll watch this space and see if we get that far, because we have a lot of beans that we're switching over from doing the bush beans to the pole beans, just because, exactly like what Darren said, the production on the pole beans on a small scale, because it's more labor intensive, because you have to pick them by hand because there's no machinery can do it. So from a commercial scale, pole beans are terrible, but from a feeding yourself homestead perspective,
It's crazy.
yeah. And if you can do dry beans, whether it's a dual purpose or we've even grown some that are just dry beans, the true red cranberry bean. And it was crazy how prolific it was compared to some of our bush bean varieties. Still love the bush beans, but we're kind of at that phase now where it's like, well, maximizing production in a way.
I'm at the point where I don't want to do bush beans because the pole greens are so awesome. Like, why would you waste that space in the garden doing just a bush bean when you can do a pole bean on such a kind of I want to say a smaller scale, but going upright.
Mhm.
Like,
You get more out of the same space.
yeah,
Because it's on vertical.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
We even grow we grow watermelons now. They're sugar baby watermelons, so they're a small watermelon, but we grow them on the trellises. We grow our Kajari melons, and we do cucumbers on them. We're thinking. I've grown squash in the past on trellises, but I would probably caution big squash unless you're really careful about supporting them, because they'll eventually just break off the plant before they're ripe. But there's lots of
I know
things
you-
you can go with.
I know you were talking about cattle panels because I'm
Yeah.
heading down to Michigan here soon enough, I think, and I'm going to try and bring back a bunch of them because I think they're only $25 a piece down there.
They're a
So
lot cheaper in the U.S.
They're awesome.
yeah,
That's something we love
so
growing.
yeah,
I forget. I think we have about 50 or 60 of them, but they're split up between gardening and livestock at the moment. But I would love to have like 100 more.
And it's funny, we went into our local hardware store and we said cattle panel, and they were like, what? But also, we're in Quebec. So we basically asked for the reinforcement for concrete flooring.
Mhm.
And it's a 4x8
Okay.
metal panel that they stick down on the concrete floors. So you ask for a 4x4, but a 4x8 sheet of metal rod reinforcing, and yeah, basically cattle panel.
We're thinking of going with them too for some of the for some of the trellises, because I believe they're not galvanized, but they'll still last for.
No, it like
Yeah.
ours started rusting. So what we noticed is when we were growing our green beans on it, is that you get a little rust on the
Vine.
plant, but it was all good, no problem.
Mhm.
You
Who
know, if
doesn't
you were
like
to
a little
just
metal iron in their diet, right?
if you were to just spray paint those beforehand, they wouldn't
Yeah.
rust. They'd last for years.
Yeah, you Cerakote them.
What's that?
You Cerakote them.
No,
They're
it
all
can hurt
good.
once it's dry.
Yeah, that's definitely something we thought too of starting to. I think the one thing is the downside to the vertical growing, if you're going big right off the bat, is the infrastructure, right? But if you kind of tackle it slowly over the years
Yeah.
and accumulate that infrastructure, whatever works for you, then suddenly you can grow an amazing amount of food in a very small space.
Infrastructure is huge for that kind of thing. And the thing we found is, growing our potatoes versus our turnips and carrots, where it's like all spread out and we go into our gardens and just start pulling stuff out. The vertical stuff, the green beans, we would have to take a ladder and move the ladder around every day to harvest the green beans. So it was like every day we're moving the ladder around this 24-foot by 2-foot garden just to harvest these green beans.
Cool.
It's like Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Growing pole beans is an old timey skill that people don't
Yeah.
do enough anymore.
Yeah.
All right. Well, looks like we've been on for about an hour and a half already. Let's see here. Everybody just keeps talking about squash. I think what we'll do is
Squash.
we'll wrap
Who
it up.
doesn't love good squash?
Does anybody have any questions before we go ahead and sign off tonight?
I see there's been some pretty good discussion in the chat, which is awesome. Probably should say for those who are in here, we usually get kind of absorbed in the conversation, so we don't.
Yeah, I know.
We don't always see everybody's, but we definitely or mention everybody's. But definitely appreciate all the.
For me, it's hard because I get absorbed in the conversation and my brain starts thinking about stuff and I don't pay attention to the chat, which I should. So,
Yeah, but I pay attention to the chat, and sometimes my brain goes sideways anyway. So no matter what we do, We're doomed.
And I can actually see the chat tonight. Yay! Technology
James,
decided to work.
what's going on? You're amazing.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it, buddy. Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's
man.
crazy.
That's
Thanks,
so
bud.
awesome.
You know, going back to the chat thing, I have to say that's one thing I love about doing lives with Angie, because she's constantly like looking at it and seeing those things, and when she's focused on what she's talking about, I take the time and go through the chat and kind of pick things out too, and so it really.
It's so funny you mention that, because every so often I look at you and you're looking up at the thing. It's like, oh, Angie's looking at me. Angie's saying something. I'm not doing something right.
What do I need to do?
Oh, okay, you call it out.
Hi.
Am I in trouble now, Ange?
No.
Okay. As long as I'm not in trouble, that's all good.
But you're not in
But
trouble.
I wanted to
But
pop on and say thank you for everyone watching, and thank you to
Yeah.
James as well. Both very, very generous. So thank you very, very much. It means a lot.
That is so awesome.
Aw,
I'm
but
just
he
so
said-
happy that
okay, I'm gonna
I'm not in
highlight.
trouble.
James has made a comment. You bring value to my life and that of my family. I hope that everyone does well enough to contribute and share their views.
Oh man,
That is awesome.
And I think that's an excellent point too about the round table, because you said it. I'm going to go right back to the first here, because you said it. I think at the beginning, Mike, about how we all have slightly different perspectives on things, but yet we're really all going in the same direction of we want to grow as much, all of us, all five of us now, want to grow as much food as we can for ourselves and our own families, but we also want to share that, because we do think there's value in sharing that with basically the world, because that's what YouTube is, to hopefully inspire them, teach them, show them things they never even knew they could do, or that they thought
I
about.
would love if everyone could do what we were doing, and basically, you know, from a little Legends of the Fall, screw the government, you know. So like,
Yeah, I one thing, especially being in the background and listening to the chat, the one thing that I take from every single roundtable is that we all have different methods, we all have different ways, we all have different things that we like more over the other, but yet somehow we're all still managing to get there. And I think that's mostly the point that I would want to put across too, is that I have done so much research on many, you know, like if I'm doing gardening, like you guys said, you like many different methods, which is awesome, because somebody who's just starting out, yeah, I got that book recently too. Annie did a video on it, and I got it from there.
and
But
James,
especially people,
yes, Angie will.
I will
oblivion
on
when I get up there
maybe
the next time.
7th, 8th, 6th, something around there.
The 6th,
But yeah,
I
that's
think
what
you
I
will
think.
see me.
You may have to do it after the homesteading conference.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
After all the footage is taken.
After
Yeah.
everything's done, then you can, you know, have your way with me.
Oh.
See, I kind of behave myself when I'm live or when I'm behind in front of the camera, and when I'm not, I quite often misbehave, and I find myself in the doghouse, which is why when we moved up here, I built such a glamorous and big doghouse, so I'd be comfortable at least now.
Oh my.
I'm now afraid
Yeah,
for myself.
Xavier says, but if Thor is wearing sunglasses indoors, we'll all know.
Remember that.
I might have to tell him twice.
Exactly.
All right, I just wanted to pop in and intimidate Darren.
Okay, well,
You achieved that.
I married the only girl ever scared me. I think on that note, we're kind of closing down for tonight. Thank you to everybody for showing up. Thank you, James, for your love and your giving. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
That was
We love hanging out with you guys. We love, being able to share our views and our experiences with everybody. And I think that's the biggest thing that this YouTube channel has showed me is we all love being able to share that. And thank you for being a part of it. So
Yeah.
for me
Thanks
and you
everyone for
Acres,
checking us all out.
Yes, thank you everybody
as
for joining.
always, take care.
Take care, everyone.
God bless.
Thank you.
Yeah.